Call of Duty Zombies has had its fair share of ups and downs over the years, but with the Cold War DLC season upon us, I firmly believe that Zombies is heading in the right direction, and I am genuinely excited for what the future holds. With the release of Firebase Z, we can now begin to see where the DLC season might take us, and we have a much better understanding of the type of gameplay they are going for overall. Historically, the two most important map releases in a game's life cycle are going to be the on-disc maps, followed closely by DLC 1. This is when people are going to be more invested in the game than they ever will be again, and it is critical for Treyarch to catch people's attention and set an accessible groundwork to build upon for new and experienced players alike. While World at War and Black Ops 1 pulled this off masterfully with their opening maps, subsequent releases have been iffy to say the least. Now, before you crucify me for besmirching your beloved Black Ops 2 and 3, no, not you. Get out of here. You deserve it. Anyway, before you crucify me, hear me out. You bring home your copy of Black Ops 2, eager to experience more zombies after a full year hiatus since the launch of Moon. You pop in the disc to your 360, eager to jump straight into the new map, and then... Okay. Not a big deal. Everyone is allowed an oopsie every now and then. Let's see how this season pass plays out. Surely they can't mess this up twice in a... Well, obviously Black Ops 2 turned out fine by the end of its run, thanks to Mob of the Dead, Buried, and Origins being three of the greatest maps ever made. Being left with nothing but Transit and Die Rise for the first few months of this game's existence left a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths, myself included. And while Town is still a fan favorite, it wasn't enough to hold many people's interest. Black Ops 3 has a leg up in this regard, and that I would say there is not a single bad map in this entire game's lineup. In fact, to this day, it is the game that I recommend people when they tell me they want to get back into zombies. It is the definitive zombies experience, and it is not even close. However, I don't know what Treyarch was thinking, putting a complicated map like Shadows of Evil on disc, and a simple by comparison map like Der Eisendrache as the DLC 1 map. Thank goodness there was the Giant, because imagine being a new Zombies player and loading into this map for the first time. Everything is a squid, and the first thing you are tasked with doing is some cockamamie multi-step Easter egg hunt that can only be completed as a warp speed Squidbilly. Oh, and just when you're getting the hang of it, you run out of time because you blinked and that cost you too much time. Oh well, I'll just try it again, right? Nope. Your dumbass has to wait a full round to try again. So a round or two later, you finally piece together that you have to take this cosmic bocce ball and the other item to summon some demons and explode this guy to get a space worm. Because it only makes sense that a secret Nazi experiment would lead to space worms eventually. Only to realize that you have to do that 4 more times just to open Pack-a-Punch. Shadows of Evil is a great map, and chronologically in the story it makes sense, but gameplay-wise, Der Eisendrache should have been the on-disc map, and Shadows should have been DLC 1. I would talk about Black Ops 4 here, but I'm afraid the mere mention of it may cause a blue screen. 4 launch maps are only cool if they're playable, Treyarch. And then came along Cold War, finally breaking the pattern with Die Maschine and Firebase Z. Now, I have mentioned before, but I believe that Die Maschine is the best on-disc map that we have gotten since Kino der Toten. I still stand by that. While personally, I have been a fan of the Easter egg-centric style of maps that we have been used to under Jason Blundell, it is extremely refreshing to truly have a map that can be played as a straightforward survival map. It is so nice to be able to just load into a zombies game and not have to worry about a mind-numbing amount of Easter egg puzzles right off the bat. It adds so much to the replayability of the map, and it makes it infinitely easier to convince friends to come play co-op with me. Not everyone has the time or the energy to do the Shadows of Evil setup back to back to back, but I can tell you I have played plenty of back-to-back games of Die Maschine. Firebase Z carries many of these same characteristics and expands upon many of the gameplay ideas introduced to us in Die Maschine. While Firebase Z is a little more complex than its predecessor, it is not complex to a fault like some earlier Blundell maps can be. Cold War Zombies as a whole feels like the team took both a step back and pushed the envelope at the same time, and I feel like they are succeeding massively in what they are trying to accomplish. Taking the gameplay loop as a whole back to a more easy to pick up, difficult to master approach a la Black Ops 1 is a very welcome change. The zombies' damage and aggression scale with the rounds as the player should be progressing, which makes early round exploration in these maps so much more convenient than in previous titles. Especially since crawlers haven't been meta since Black Ops 1. Not to mention the attention to detail and how high round players experience the game. The health cap at round 40, paired with the damage and speed progression of the zombies into round 55 and above, make for an absolutely insane high round experience where you have to be lightning quick on the sticks and make as few mistakes as possible or risk ending your game. Yet, at the same time, they bring so many new and welcome additions to the mode that ensure that we aren't just doing a nostalgia victory lap. Again. The addition of drops from the zombies adds a lot of flavor into the gameplay loop and widens the scope that RNGesus' loving arms can reach. Rather than needing to get lucky at the box, embark on yet another side Easter egg. Seriously, it's not even April. Or just deal with what that specific map has to offer. Any zombie can drop any equipment at any time and can be picked up by any player. The expendability of the equipment and the fact that they can even be crafted with scrap at the workbench allows for so much more variety. Not to mention the addition of killstreak rewards to the fray. It blows the doors wide open for so many different strategies that would simply not be possible if some of these items didn't exist. Now, in what has been a bit more controversial, the overhaul of the point system. This is something that they tried back in Black Ops 4, and it was not received very well by and large. While the point system in Cold War is definitely similar, the addition of common and rare scrap really make this system work in my opinion. While min-maxing points in earlier games can be a fun time, it is definitely a habit that is hard to kill. It could also slow the game down to a degree. With Treyarch wanting to get players into the game quicker and with less hassle, I can see the incentive for taking away the points given for damage. It is a nice feeling knowing that when I load into a game with an assault rifle or a shotgun, I don't have to wait 15 rounds for it to actually be viable due to being able to get more points with another weapon. It was exactly that reason why I hardly ever used shotguns in any of the earlier games. It just didn't make sense for points, and by the time it did, there were either weak or you had another wonder weapon in your hand anyway. The fact that the points are reserved for doors, weapons, and perks only is another welcome treat as well. Throughout the game, you never have to feel strained for points, but it is something that needs to be managed well in order to succeed. You can't just build up a Bezos fund and live off the interest by round 20. And this is where scrap comes in. Using scrap for upgrading weapon rarity, armor level, and equipment workbenches allows for a solid and steady progression of the player without the player ever feeling too underpowered or overpowered. The player can choose to manage the speed of progression towards a more offensive or defensive playstyle, but it'll not be until at least round 25 or 30 when both can really be maxed out. It's laid out so that progression has to be earned rather than just being a given. Speaking of overhauling systems, Treyarch, thank you so much for the gift that is this armor system. Since its introduction in Black Ops 2, the shield has been every bit as much of a staple to this mode as Juggernaut and the Pack-a-Punch machine. Ingraining this into the core gameplay even further by having armor level progression, full body protection, and giving it an information-rich spot on the HUD for visual feedback was long overdue, and I'm glad that it was done. While D Machina introduced all of these ideas to us, it is Firebase Z where these ideas really begin to take shape and find a direction. The Mimic might be one of the most Treyarch mini-bosses they have ever created. While after a few spawns their surprise is about as clever as a decoy grenade in multiplayer, the fact that they created an enemy that spawns out of the very things we were conditioned to pick up no questions in D Machina adds a certain level of distrust and can make you reevaluate risking your life to pick up that self-revive that dropped mid-round. They also run with the idea of kill streaks and equipment in the mode with the assault rounds. These rounds are such a fun addition to the mode and give a much more direct purpose to the kill streaks in-game, especially some of the newer ones like napalm strikes and artillery. This is definitely a reoccurring theme around Firebase Z, and just about everything done in this map takes an idea introduced in D Machina, but takes it one step further. The Easter egg is more fleshed out. The setup is just the right amount of challenge at each step without being overbearing. The locations of key landmarks like the trials, armor and weapon stations, and wall buys all just make more sense. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows in Cold War. The self-revive can definitely make the game feel too easy at times, and the lack of personality and narrative-driven playable characters is at least partially felt. But overall, I feel like Treyarch is heading in the right direction with Cold War. Firebase Z is just the first DLC release of many, and I cannot wait to see what Treyarch has in store. The future is looking very bright for zombies. Thank you all so much for watching the video all the way to the end if you've gotten this far. If you enjoyed it, definitely give it a thumbs up, helps me out a lot, and subscribe for more zombies content coming down the pipeline. Appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video.